Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at a video from Asmongold. Now I'm not targeting him specifically. He's just the most recent example that I saw, and I thought it was funny and an interesting manner, I guess you could say. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'm sure is a term that you all have heard about. It's been going around for a while. It's actually gotten quite a negative connotation now, to the point where people are trying to change the terminology that they use when they refer to this type of stuff. However, I've heard people like Asmongolds where they would basically acknowledge DEI in any other term. They would talk about ideologies, they would talk about agendas, but the moment DEI itself comes up, they try to redirect. They seem to have issues directly acknowledging DEI. So usually they will try to act like it's not that big of a deal. But when they're not mentioning DEI, they are referring to DEI just through other means. So you'll see what I'm talking about. Let's just watch this video. Here's the first clip.
Looked like DEI. It looked like the exact type of game that was made for people that like to be offended. And it was like made for Twitter, where it's like you can't kill the animals, but you can pet them. Like all the characters are like super bland, and you can only steal from police officers. It's just such such an obnoxious representation. You can't rob anyone? Yeah, exactly. It's like you can be an outlaw, but you can only do good things, basically.
Why Ubisoft took such a huge hit, at least financially, from within its own investor
Modern
circle.
safe
Shares
dog
lost
shit,
over 10%.
Okay, so he mentioned modern safe crap. He mentioned Twitter. He mentioned bland characters. I mean, everything he mentions there in that clip speaks of DEI. DEI is why they view things the way they view. That's why they do what they do when he's talking about all this crap that he just mentioned in the clip. DEI is the reason. That's why people are so offended by sexy characters, by white characters, by non-diverse characters. I mean, it's DEI. Twitter is all about DEI. They're activists. That's all they care about.
Investors
Well, it was just stupid, right? It was stupid. They should have, like, I don't know what the idea is. Like, if you look at a Star Wars, like, if you go look at any Star Wars convention and you look at who's there, it's a bunch of guys. Like, you can't make a female-centric Star Wars story and then expect the same male audience to buy that game at the same ratio that they're going to buy the other ones at. Like, it's so crazy to me that such an obvious reality that any normal person can see that's evident and right in front of them.
Now, I've said this before. I've made a video on this. Video games are still predominantly dominated by guys, whether it be young boys or adult men. It's guys buying these things. Yes, girls play games, but nowhere near the number that guys do.
Is somehow, like, unimaginable by a multi-billion-dollar company. Well, not multi anymore, as we can see, but by a billion-dollar company. Unless she's hot. Yeah, unless the character is really hot. That's true. It's a bunch of guys with lightsabers. Yeah, exactly. Like, what do you mean? Like, of course, girls like Star Wars. There's plenty of girls like Star Wars, but there's way more guys.
Yep, exactly.
And if you look at guys that are like, who's playing a lot of PC games? Guys. Like, you're looking action combat shooting games. Guys are playing those fucking games.
Yep. Which is why he mentioned unless they're hot, right? So what he's referring to there is the guys buying games that have female protagonists in them because they're hot. They get their attention. And so then they say, oh, the game's good, so they'll buy the game. Stellar Blade is an example that comes to mind. First Descendants is a game that comes to mind. Your audience is majority guys. If you don't appeal to the guys, then the vast majority of those guys will not show up for your game. Your game will fail. This is part of the problem that Star Wars Outlaw is coming into. The character design of the main protagonist, she is just ugly. She does not appeal to anybody. The real person this character was based off of, they did dirty. She was much more beautiful than what they actually put into the game. I don't know why they did it this way. We can only speculate, but I mean, it's not going to appeal to a guy. And the fact that you don't have lightsabers and Jedi in the game, you're already behind the 8 ball here. So you're just hurting yourself even more.
Damn. They have a Rainbow Six wheelchair operator. I think that's also another really big problem. And I do think that, like, it's...
I don't know. When you put something in a game, like a Rainbow Six wheelchair operator, what part of DEI does that normally fall under? It could be both diversity and equity, to be honest with you. And include, I mean, it's all three, right? So you're not representing everybody in the game if you don't have someone who's, you know, disabled. I mean, it's a wheelchair. That's been a thing. It's been going on for probably months now, whether it be like Magic the Gathering or D&D or whatever. I can't remember which one specifically, but there, had a representation because, wheelchair in the fantasy world because, you got magic and healing, all this other stuff. But hell, they're never going to fix the legs. Let's just put them in like a floating wheelchair. No, not even floating wheelchair, just a normal wheelchair. Like, look, these guys aren't Professor X, right? So, which you could have done in that method, but at the same time, when you're in an environment where you're in combat, wheelchair, come on, really? Professor X was never really in combat like that, or at least he did it with his mind, and he didn't really need to move around a lot. And when he did, he got his ass beat because he was like thrown around in his wheelchair. I can't tell how many times I've seen that in like the cartoon, the X-Men cartoon that initially came out back in the 90s. So again, wheelchair in a game like Rainbow Six, it's part of DEI.
I think that's also another really big problem. And I do think that like it's definitely ideology first and gameplay second with these guys. And I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to use the game to like push some sort of like agenda. Like
what ideology and agenda here are you referring to, Asmon? Please tell me. Use the phrase. Use the phrase. DEI. DEI.
Why would you ever want to have a person in a wheelchair? Like, in what universe, in a Rainbow Six situation, would you ever want to have a person in a wheelchair?
Exactly.
Like, it's such a ridiculous concept.
Yep.
That, like, when you take a step back and you just think about it for more than a few seconds, you'd realize.
Just like DEI is a ridiculous concept in gaming, Hollywood, anything like that. It's ridiculous.
This is the stupidest, dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. It's so outrageous. Yeah, stairs are in the game. Yeah, how the fuck does that work? Right? Only if he's a hacker? Well, even then, it still just doesn't make sense. And so it's about some sort of a message. Yeah, it's.
What message, Asmon? Please tell me what message.
Weird, man. And I think anybody can see this.
Ruining everything, and he's making us all go broke.
Mm-hmm.
The DEI initiative apparently is not working, or at least whatever strategic play Ubisoft has
Oh, he said DEI in a video. Well, let's watch Asmon.
had in the works for some time. It just
I don't think that it's as simple as saying because of DEI, Ubisoft's bad.
He just went through a rant talking about ideology and agenda at these places and how bad it is and how it's ruining things. And now he's saying, well, no, I don't. What he's doing here is he doesn't want people to assume that he's focusing solely on DI. But I just showed you several clips where he went through and talked about things that is solely under the umbrella of DEI. But the moment someone mentions DEI, he has to say, oh, I don't think it's solely DEI. And I find it hilarious.
I think that, like, if you actually get down to the nuts and bolts of the gameplay in these games, the gameplay is bad.
Why is the gameplay bad, Asmon? What are they focusing on instead of the gameplay? Please tell me.
Like, the DNA of the game is bad.
Why?
Yeah, you can say, oh, well, it's a female lead character, so people aren't that interested. Sure, yeah.
Yeah, because we just talked about that.
True. Maybe that is why. But if you actually look at the gameplay itself, it's also garbage.
Why? Why is it garbage? Could it be that they're focused on all these other decisions, and so they spend less time on the actual game and gameplay itself? I mean, quite possibly. Can we at least acknowledge that DEI is the only thing that the West is doing that most people in the East, well, Japan, unfortunately, is being lured in by the West when it comes to this DEI crap. But you got like China with Wukong and their games they released. I think Tencent is their developer or publisher over there. And then you have Korea and the games they released, like Stellar Blade, First Descendants. Look, they are being extremely super successful right now for one reason only. They are not pushing DEI. They are not worried about DEI. They will tell you to fuck off if you try to push DEI within the company. Was it Stellar Blade that fired all those people? I can't remember. But anyway, they are focused on the game, the gameplay, and appealing to the audience that they want to appeal to. They understand guys play games, so they make their characters, both guys and girls, they make them attractive. They make the gameplay attractive. They make everything about the game attractive. When you get home, look. Stellar Blade, for example. You look at the box art. this is going to draw a guy's attention. It's got a hot chick in space in a skin tight outfit. The trailer is going to draw a guy's attention. The gameplay is going to draw a guy's attention, both because of how the character is designed and the gameplay itself. The combat was really good. Same thing with First Ascendant. I really like First Ascendant, and it's not usually a game I go for because it's really a grindy game, but I do like the story. I think they're going to probably introduce PvP, which I probably won't be involved in because I'm not a sweat. I don't grind it like that. I just don't have the time. But the gameplay and the story I thought were really good. I enjoyed it. I played with my wife. But the character designs, that's what got me into the game. That's what got my attention. I'm like, okay, I'll give the game a shot. After I see the hot chick, I'm like, you know, my little antenna perks up a little bit, right? Yeah. Not that one, just my theoretical one. I mean, that one perks up sometimes too, but not because of game characters. Anyway, so I'm like, okay, that looks interesting. So then I'll look closer at the game and see if the gameplay itself is something I'd be interested in. That's how you get people, especially guys. It doesn't have to be a hot, sexy babe either. There's games that have drawn my attention because the guys on the box are super buff and strong, carrying axes or whatever. I'm like, yeah, that's badass. I would love to be able to do that. And that gets my attention. I look at the gameplay. You have to appeal to your player base. The people who are going to be buying your product, you have to appeal to them. And if you don't, which the West is focusing less and less on, in fact, they're actually antagonistic towards their player base, you will start to fail and have less and less success. Either you'll outright fail and lose a bunch of money, or you won't have as much of an ROI as you wanted on a particular game, such as like Suicide Squad, right? It actually seemed to have a decent sales numbers, but how much the game costs and how much it probably would cost to keep going because it was a live service game, it wasn't enough. They probably lost money on the game, or at least did not make as much as they needed to keep it going. So yes, DEI is the reason. DEI is the reason for all of this. It is the only thing the West is doing differently compared to the East. Attractive women, bad. Attractive men, bad. Lesbians, good. Gay stuff, good. Straight relationships, bad. Anything that falls under the DEI umbrella is bad. And look, I'm not saying gay or lesbian relationships are bad. Hell, when I was a teenager, I loved watching some of those videos that had lesbians in it, if you know what I'm talking about. But it's the way they do it, the focus on it, the shoving it down your throat, figuratively speaking. They don't do it in a natural way. Final Fantasy 16 has probably the best gay representation in that game that I've yet seen. I mean, there could be others, but I may not have played that game, right? But Dion, he was a gay character in the game, but he was a great character. I liked that guy a lot. I liked what he stood for. I liked how he was written. I didn't care that he was gay. Representation matters, sure, but it's how you do it. And unfortunately, DEI here in the West is not about representation anymore. In fact, it probably never really was. That's how it was sold. But it seems to be more about giving someone the power and the ability to oppress those they want to oppress because they feel they're more privileged. It's both class and race-based. Almost there's anti-whiteness, sewn into this whole DEI DNA, as well as anti-class sewed into this whole DEI DNA. And that's the problem. And you need to call it out. And Asmund, he will call it out, except by name. He'll speak to class issues. He'll speak to race issues. He'll speak to all this other stuff. But he won't call DEI out by name. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just such a negative word for him that he feels saying it detracts from the overall message, perhaps. But I do find it funny. I find it very interesting that he'll describe it to a T, but when it comes terms to saying what words he's describing, he will refuse to say it. Now, he mentioned it earlier because the video mentioned it, or one of his chatters actually mentioned it first, and he didn't outright dismiss it. But again, he did acknowledge that there was something there, but he just won't come out and say DEI is the problem, because he tries to say it's the gameplay. Well, why is the gameplay suffering? It's not a coincidence that games started being horrible, the gameplay, and that companies that once had a great reputation for making great games, like Ubisoft, all of a sudden is failing at making the same level of quality for their games. It's not a coincidence that that started happening around the same time that all this DEI activist agenda bullshit started being pushed through social media, through society, through politics, because nowadays the people making these games are activists. They wear their politics on their sleeve. Anything and everything they do has to represent their politics. And if you have companies like Disney who will outright refuse to greenlight a show if they feel like it's got too many white people in it. There's been reports previously put out over the last year or two where they said the show would be good, but it's too white and they won't greenlight it. It's been reported on. It's fact. Go look it up. DEI is their religion right now. Whether you call it DEI or whether you call it something else, this is not a coincidence, guys, that games started having this issue the moment this started taking off. Were there bad games before? Sure. Were there good games before? Sure. But when you have companies who are really good at making good games, all of a sudden not making good games, the moment they start worshiping at the altar of DEI, maybe DEI is the problem. They're too focused on it instead of making a good game, because white man bad, straight man bad. And then they started to introduce the word cis everywhere when they talk about, I mean, this is a problem. And I just wish people like Asmongolds could come out and actually acknowledge it. And it just seems like he is hesitant to do so. So that's the video, guys. I hope you liked the video. If you do, don't forget to hit the thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more content, and I'll talk to you guys next time.